Two kids were fined $450 by a fake HOA officer just for selling lemonade in their own yard. The man, Harold Deming, had been targeting families for months with phony citations and scare tactics, but their mother, Michelle, had the background and the courage to expose his entire scheme. And just wait until you see who showed up on their porch to tear the fines in half on camera. It was the kind of Saturday that made you believe summer could last forever. The sun hung high over Mapleview Lane, a quiet neighborhood lined with white fences and chalk drawings. Abby Reynolds, age 10, had been planning her lemonade stand all week, down to the pastel signs, the matching cups, and even a homemade tip jar labeled "For Puppy Fund." Her little brother Luke, only 7, was in charge of ice and smiles. Their folding table sat just inside the boundary of their front lawn. Nothing fancy, just fresh squeezed lemonade, a bowl of quarters for change, and a lot of pride. Neighbors strolled by and waved. Some bought a cup, others just smiled. It was everything a childhood memory should be. But just 40 minutes in, the mood shifted. A beige SUV rolled up and parked halfway over the curb. A man stepped out, mid-50s, sunburnt face, khaki pants with a tucked-in polo, and a clip-on badge that didn't quite shine like the real thing. He walked with the swagger of someone used to giving orders, clipboard clutched like a weapon. No greetings, no questions. He stared down at the two kids like they'd just built a bonfire on the lawn. "This stand is in violation of community code," he said flatly. "You can't conduct unlicensed sales on HOA property." Abby blinked. Luke looked up at him, clutching his juice-stained cup. "But we don't have an HOA," Abby said, her voice faltering. The man didn't pause. He scribbled something on a sheet of pink carbon paper, tore it off, and slapped it on the cooler. Then another onto their hand-drawn sign. A third went directly into Luke's hands. 3 fines, $150 each, labeled unauthorized commercial activity with a line for HOA officer signature, scrawled in a barely legible loop. That's when Michelle Reynolds came rushing out of the house. She hadn't even put shoes on. "Excuse me, who are you?" she asked, storming down the walkway. He didn't answer, just held up the badge, which read, "Community Oversight Division." No seal, no agency name, nothing official. "I'm with compliance enforcement," he said curtly. "Further resistance will escalate this matter." "Escalate? You just handed fake tickets to children," Michelle said, her voice rising. "Show me your ID, not that plastic badge, your real ID." The man hesitated, eyes darting toward the car. "You'll be contacted," he muttered. And then he turned, climbed back into the SUV, and drove off before anyone could call the police. Michelle stood frozen on the sidewalk, the pink slip still flapping in her hand. Behind her, Abby had tears in her eyes. Luke was hugging the tip jar. The lemonade stand was silent now, cups untouched, pitcher sweating in the sun. The sweet smell of lemons didn't hide the sting that had just landed on their front lawn, and in that moment the neighborhood felt a little less safe. By Sunday morning, the Reynolds family woke to find a new piece of paper taped to their mailbox, this time printed in bold all-caps type. "Second notice. Compliance action pending." Another copy was stuck to their garage door. Still, no official logo, no contact number, no government seal. Just more vague threats printed on the same pink paper. Michelle didn't need her morning coffee to know something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She took a photo, posted it to her neighborhood Facebook group with a simple caption. "This was taped to our mailbox this morning. We don't have an HOA. Does anyone recognize this man?" What happened next shifted the entire mood of the community. Within the hour, comments flooded in. "He fined my daughter for her bake sale in April?" "Same guy tried to shut down our Scouts fundraiser in my driveway. Said we needed a seasonal event permit." "That badge is totally fake. He showed up at my niece's house too." The pattern was clear. This wasn't a one-time intimidation. It was a string of targeted visits, always to kids or families hosting innocent, small community events, always with fake authority, always just intimidating enough to scare them into silence. But Michelle Reynolds wasn't going to be silenced. Before moving to Mapleview Lane, she had spent 6 years as a city clerk. She knew the difference between an ordinance and a scam. With a master's degree in public administration and a shelf full of case files from her government days, she knew where to look and how to dig. She started making calls. The Community Oversight Division listed on the fine didn't exist in the city or county registry. She checked licensing databases, enforcement agency rosters, even the state's certified compliance officer registry. Nothing. The address listed on the bottom of the fine led to a half-abandoned strip mall on the edge of town, just a boarded-up nail salon, a vacant dollar store, and a mail-drop kiosk. The man had no legal authority, no agency, no record. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't an inspector. He was just someone who dressed like one and preyed on people too polite or too scared to question him. But Michelle wasn't alone in her digging. Unbeknownst to her, the photo of Abby holding the fine, eyes red from crying, lemonade stand behind her, had already made its way beyond the neighborhood. A woman named Dana Schultz, a policy aide to the governor, saw it on her daughter's phone. Her daughter, a fifth grader, went to school with Abby. She recognized the name. She recognized the street. By Monday morning, the image and the story behind it was sitting on Governor Evelyn Clark's desk, clipped to a summary marked, "Urgent, Civil Authority Impersonation Allegation, Children Involved." And from that moment on, the game had changed. By Thursday afternoon, Michelle was pacing in the kitchen, her phone buzzing every few minutes with new messages from neighbors, reporters, and parents. The story had caught fire. Local radio stations were talking about it, and the lemonade stand fines hashtag was trending statewide. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened just after 3 p.m. A black SUV pulled up in front of the house, followed closely by a marked cruiser. At first, Michelle tensed, half expecting another empty threat taped to her door. Instead, a state trooper stepped out, straight-backed and uniformed, and walked up the path. Behind him emerged Governor Evelyn Clark herself. It was surreal. She was composed, commanding, and flanked by a team of staffers. One carried a manila folder, another held a small mobile camera rig already recording. Michelle opened the door, and before she could even speak, the governor offered her hand. "Miss Reynolds, I want to thank you," she said, locking eyes with her. "What you exposed here, it's not just offensive, it's criminal." She opened the manila folder and removed the stack of pink tickets. All three, the original ones handed to Abby and Luke, plus copies taken from other families who had come forward. "These are not just invalid," Governor Clark declared, holding them up to the camera. "They're fraudulent instruments of intimidation." And with the sound of paper tearing, she ripped them in half, right there on the Reynolds' front porch, in full view of the neighborhood and the press. Michelle stood frozen, overwhelmed. Abby and Luke peeked from behind the doorway, wide-eyed. A moment ago, they were kids who thought a lemonade stand could get them in trouble. Now, they were watching the governor of Ohio defend them on their own front steps. But Governor Clark wasn't finished. She turned toward the cameras. "Our office has confirmed the identity of the man calling himself a compliance officer. His name is Harold Deming. He's a former private security contractor who lost his license 3 years ago. Since then, he's been impersonating enforcement officials and exploiting HOA confusion to harass residents, especially families, especially children, for personal profit." She paused, letting that sink in. "Let me be clear. That ends now." Within 48 hours, Harold Deming was in custody. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud, impersonating a public official, and targeted harassment. Authorities discovered hundreds of dollars in fines he'd collected across 3 counties. His fake badges, citation books, and printed threats were seized as evidence. To many, he was just a man with a clipboard. But to families like the Reynolds, he had cast a shadow over their trust, their children's innocence, and their front lawns. Now, for the first time, the sun felt like it had come back out. The following Saturday, the lemonade stand was back. Same table, same bright signs, but this time with a new sign in front. "Free lemonade. Thank you for believing in us." Abby and Luke stood behind the cooler again, but now their smiles were wide and unafraid. Neighbors brought folding chairs, lawn blankets, even homemade cookies to share. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker, playing cheerful music. What had once been the scene of a quiet injustice had become a celebration. 2 local police officers parked across the street, not for protection, but as a gesture. They took turns sipping lemonade and posing for photos with the kids. It wasn't about security anymore. It was about community. Then, without fanfare, a familiar black SUV returned. No cameras this time, no microphones, just Governor Evelyn Clark, walking up the sidewalk in jeans and a navy windbreaker. She carried 2 certificates in a sleek leather folder. "I promised you we'd make it right," she said, smiling as she knelt beside the stand. "This isn't official state business, but it's from the heart." She handed Abby and Luke each a gold-trimmed certificate that read Entrepreneurial Citizenship Award for Courage, Integrity, and Community Spirit. Both were signed in gold ink, with her personal seal below. Michelle stood behind her kids, a hand on each of their shoulders. For the first time in a week, she wasn't bracing for a knock, a letter, or another confrontation. She was simply proud. Proud of them. Proud of herself. Proud of the neighbors who rallied when it mattered. Meanwhile, justice had continued its quiet work in the background. Harold Deming pled guilty to multiple charges. His sentence was deliberate, symbolic, and public. Full restitution to every family he had fined, mandatory community service, 400 hours of it, assigned to actual local events where he would serve under real supervision, with no badge, no clipboard, and no authority. Just humility. Some said it was too light. Others said it was perfect. Either way, the message was clear. Power built on lies doesn't stand long when truth speaks up. And the lemonade stand? In just 6 weekends, it raised $3,200. Abby and Luke donated every cent to the Children's Hospital downtown. "Hey, for the kids who can't run lemonade stands," they told the news anchor who came to cover the final day. What started as a quiet act of childhood turned into something bigger. A reminder that even small voices, when they speak up, can make a big difference. And sometimes, the sweetest justice is served ice cold, with a slice of lemon.